Now, 100 years after a British mountaineer disappeared on an expedition to Mount Everest, climbers appear to have found his remains. Andrew Irvine, who went missing with the renowned explorer George Mallory, whose body was, of course, found in 1999.
For 100 years, the world's tallest mountain has guarded secrets that scientists cannot explain and mysteries that climbers dare not speak about. High on its frozen slopes, bodies remain preserved as if time itself has stopped. Strange voices are reported echoing through the ice, and unexplained footprints appear where no human should be able to walk. Then, in 2024, the melting glaciers finally revealed something that had been hidden for a century. Something that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about human achievement. A mystery buried in ice. Mount Everest stands at 29,031 feet above sea level, the highest point on Earth. It is a place where the air contains only 1/3 of the oxygen found at sea level and where temperatures can plunge to -40 degrees. The mountain straddles the border between Nepal and Tibet, and the local Sherpa people call it Chomolungma, which means Goddess Mother of the World. They believe the mountain is a living deity capable of both blessing and destroying those who dare to climb her slopes. For decades, history books have taught us that Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay were the first humans to reach the summit on May 29, 1953. But what if that is not entirely true? What if two men reached the top nearly 30 years earlier, and the mountain simply refused to let them return to tell their story? George Herbert Lee Mallory was born in 1886 in Cheshire, England. He was not just a climber, but a scholar who won a mathematics scholarship at age 13 and later studied at Cambridge University. His friends included some of the most brilliant minds of his generation, including the famous economist John Maynard Keynes. But Mallory's true passion was the mountains. He began climbing at age 18 and quickly proved himself one of the most talented alpinists of his era. Mallory first saw Everest in 1921 as part of the British reconnaissance expedition. He mapped the mountain's approaches and became the first Westerner to lay eyes on its western slope. It was during this expedition that he realized something crucial. At such extreme altitudes, climbers would need supplemental oxygen to survive. The air was simply too thin for the human body to function normally. Andrew Irvine, known to everyone as Sandy, was a very different kind of man. Born in 1902, he was just 22 years old when he joined the 1924 expedition. He had almost no climbing experience, but he possessed a remarkable gift for mechanical engineering. Sandy could fix anything. When the oxygen apparatus kept breaking down, Sandy redesigned the entire system, making it lighter and more reliable. Mallory saw this skill as essential to reaching the summit and chose Sandy as his climbing partner despite his inexperience. On June 8, 1924, Mallory and Irvine set out from their high camp at approximately 26,800 feet. They carried modified oxygen tanks and wore layer upon layer of wool and cotton clothing. Modern climbers have down suits and Gore-Tex jackets. Mallory and Irvine had tweeds and silk. At 12:50 in the afternoon, geologist Noel Odell was climbing below when the clouds suddenly parted. He looked up and saw two tiny black figures silhouetted against the snow, moving steadily upward toward the summit. Odell later wrote that they appeared to be going strong for the top. Then the clouds closed in again, and George Mallory and Sandy Irvine were never seen alive again. The next morning, a search party found their camps empty. The only clue was two sleeping bags arranged in a strange T shape. No bodies, no notes, no explanation. For 75 years, their fate remained one of the greatest mysteries in exploration history. Then, in 1999, an American expedition led by Conrad Anker made a stunning discovery. At 26,760 feet on the north face, Anker spotted something white against the gray rock. It was George Mallory's body, frozen and preserved by the extreme cold, lying face down as if he had simply laid down to rest. His right leg was broken. A climbing rope was still wrapped tightly around his waist, suggesting he had fallen while roped to his partner. His snow goggles were in his pocket rather than on his face, which meant he was likely descending in darkness. But the most haunting detail was what was missing. Before leaving for the summit, Mallory had promised his wife Ruth that he would leave her photograph at the top of Everest. He had tucked her picture carefully into his inner pocket. When the search team examined his body, the photograph was gone. Did Mallory reach the summit and leave Ruth's picture at the highest point on Earth before disaster struck on the descent? The only way to know for certain would be to find the camera they carried. Experts at Kodak have said the film might still be developable, even after a century in the ice. Then came September 2024. A National Geographic team, led by filmmaker Jimmy Chin, was exploring the central Rongbuk Glacier when they spotted something emerging from the melting ice. It was a leather boot with hobnailed soles. Inside the boot was a human foot. Inside the sock, stitched in red thread, were the initials AC. Irvine. 100 years after he vanished, Sandy Irvine had been found. His great-niece, Julie Summers, said she was moved to tears. The discovery proves he fell down the north face. His remains found far lower than Mallory's body. But the camera that could rewrite history remains lost somewhere on the mountain, waiting to be found. The mountain had kept Sandy Irvine hidden for a century, but it was not done revealing its secrets. Climbers who venture into Everest's highest reaches have reported encounters far stranger than frozen bodies. Encounters with figures that should not exist and voices that seem to come from nowhere at all. Spirits of the mountain. Pemba Dorje Sherpa is one of the fastest climbers ever to summit Mount Everest. In May 2004, he raced from base camp to the summit in record time. 3 days later, while descending through the death zone, he experienced something that changed his understanding of the mountain forever. As Pemba paused to rest near a pile of rocks, dark shadows began materializing around him. They were human-shaped figures stretching their hands toward him as if begging for help. Pemba is convinced these were the spirits of climbers who died trying to reach the summit, their souls trapped on the mountain because their bodies were never given proper burial rites. With more than 200 corpses frozen on Everest, the Sherpas say the mountain is crowded with restless souls. Scientists have explanations for such visions. At extreme altitude, the brain receives so little oxygen that it begins to malfunction. Blood oxygen levels can drop to just 40% of normal, comparable to patients on the verge of death. Hallucinations, confusion, and distorted perception are common, but the experiences reported on Everest follow patterns that are difficult to explain away as simple oxygen deprivation. Climbers from different expeditions, different nationalities, and different eras have described remarkably similar encounters. They report sensing invisible presences, feeling unexplained touches on their skin, seeing lights that have no source, and hearing voices offering guidance or warnings. Scientists call this the third man factor, named after a passage in the poet T.S. Eliot's famous work, The Wasteland. The phenomenon was first documented by Ernest Shackleton during his desperate Antarctic crossing in 1960. Shackleton and 2 companions were struggling across frozen mountains when all 3 became convinced that a 4th person was walking with them. No 4th person existed. On Everest, the third man has appeared many times. In 1933, climber Frank Smythe reached approximately 28,000 feet alone after his partners turned back. He later wrote that he had a strong feeling of being accompanied by a second person throughout his solo climb. The feeling was so powerful that at one point Smythe broke his chocolate bar in half and turned to offer a piece to his invisible companion before realizing no one was there. But the most remarkable third man encounter happened on September 24, 1975, when Scottish climber Dougal Haston and British climber Doug Scott became the first people to summit Everest via the treacherous southwest face. They reached the top at 6 in the evening as the sun was setting, which meant they faced a nightmare scenario. They would have to spend the night in the death zone. With no tent, no sleeping bags, almost no oxygen, and no food, Haston and Scott dug a shallow cave in the snow just below the south summit at approximately 28,700 feet. This was the highest survival bivouac ever attempted. The temperature plunged. Doug Scott had to remove his boots and put his feet under Dougal's armpits to prevent frostbite. As the hours crawled by, both men became aware of something impossible. There was someone else in the snow cave with them. They could not see this presence, but they could feel it. The entity radiated warmth and friendliness. Then it began to speak, offering words of encouragement and practical advice on how to survive until morning. A grateful feeling of relief washed over them as they realized they were not going to die after all. Somehow, they survived the night without losing a single toe to frostbite. Other climbers have reported similar experiences, and they now fondly regard this mysterious protector as the guardian angel of Everest. And then there are the sounds. When darkness falls on Everest, the mountain comes alive with noises that have terrified climbers and locals for generations. Sharp cracks and booming explosions echo through the peaks, sometimes so loud that sleep becomes impossible. To the locals, it feels as if the mountain is alive and angry, seeking to be heard. Scientists have explained the source of these sounds. When the sun sets and temperatures plunge, the glacial ice contracts rapidly. Massive cracks form, and enormous blocks of ice break free from impossible heights and crash down the mountain. But knowing the science does not make the experience any less terrifying. Climbers describe lying in their tents, listening to the mountain groan and shatter around them, knowing that an ice collapse could bury them at any moment. The sounds of Everest's fury have claimed many lives over the years, but the mountain's deadliest region lies above the reach of avalanches and ice falls, in a place where the very air becomes poison and where the dead remain exactly where they fell. The death zone. At 26,247 feet above sea level, climbers enter what is known as the death zone. This is not a dramatic nickname invented by journalists. It is a clinical description of a place where the human body cannot survive for long, no matter how fit or experienced the climber might be. In the death zone, atmospheric pressure drops so low that each breath provides only 1/3 of the oxygen available at sea level. The body cannot acclimatize to these conditions. Instead, it begins to die. Heart rates soar to 140 beats per minute, dramatically increasing the risk of stroke. The digestive system shuts down, causing rapid weight loss and muscle deterioration. Brain function becomes severely impaired, leading to confusion, hallucinations, and catastrophically poor judgment. Even with supplemental oxygen, climbers can only survive in the death zone for 16 to 20 hours. Since climbing began on Everest, at least 344 people have died on the mountain. More than 200 of their bodies remain exactly where they fell, frozen monuments to ambition and mortality. Retrieving a body from the death zone costs between $60,000 and $100,000 and requires teams of Sherpas carrying oxygen and equipment into terrain where every step could be fatal. The most famous corpse on Everest belongs to Tsewang Paljor, an Indian climber who died in a blizzard on May 10, 1996. His body came to rest in a small limestone cave at 27,900 feet on the northeast ridge, identifiable by his distinctive bright green Koflok mountaineering boots. For nearly 2 decades, virtually every climber approaching the summit from the north had to pass directly by his body. Many had to step over his legs to continue. Green Boots, as he became known, served as a grim landmark. Climbers used his body to gauge how close they were to the summit. An estimated 80% of climbers stopped to rest exactly where he lay because the cave offered shelter from the wind. In 2014, a Chinese expedition finally moved his body to a less prominent location and covered it with rocks. Near Green Boots lies a region called Rainbow Valley, and its name is one of the cruelest ironies on Earth. From a distance, Rainbow Valley appears beautiful, a splash of vibrant colors against the white snow. Up close, those colors reveal themselves as the faded reds, blues, greens, and yellows of down-climbing suits worn by the dead. The extreme cold prevents decomposition, so the bodies and their colorful jackets remain visible for decades. One of Everest's most tragic victims was Maurice Wilson, an Englishman who attempted to climb the mountain alone in 1934. Wilson was not a mountaineer. He was a World War I veteran who had been seriously wounded and suffered chronic pain for years. In 1932, he underwent what he considered a miraculous healing through a 35-day fast combined with intensive prayer. This convinced him that faith could accomplish anything. Wilson developed an audacious plan. He would fly a small airplane to Tibet, crash-land it on Everest's upper slopes, and then simply walk to the summit. The fact that he knew neither how to fly nor how to climb seemed irrelevant to him. Incredibly, Wilson taught himself to fly, purchased a small biplane, and made his way to India despite British authorities trying to stop him. When officials impounded his aircraft, he disguised himself as a Buddhist monk and trekked into Tibet. His final diary entry reads simply, "Off again, gorgeous day." His body was found the following year at the foot of the North Koran. Climbers have buried him multiple times, but his body keeps resurfacing as the glacier shifts. Perhaps no death sparked more controversy than David Sharp in 2006. He died in Green Boots Cave, while an estimated 40 climbers passed by without providing meaningful assistance. His final words to a Sherpa were, "My name is David Sharp. I am with Asian Trekking, and I just want to sleep." Sir Edmund Hillary was furious when he learned of the incident, saying the whole attitude toward climbing the mountain had become horrifying, and that people just wanted to get to the top without giving a damn for anyone in distress. The death zone claims lives every year through cold, oxygen deprivation, and exhaustion. But some climbers have discovered that the mountain holds dangers they never expected, dangers that come not from the elements, but from the very people they trusted to guide them to the summit. When the mountain's guardians attack, most people who climb Mount Everest dream of a spiritual experience. They imagine themselves ascending through the clouds toward heaven, standing at the highest point on Earth. What they do not expect is violence. On April 27, 2013, Mount Everest became the scene of what newspapers called the highest brawl in world history. 3 European climbers found themselves surrounded by approximately 100 furious Sherpas armed with rocks and sticks. They were beaten, kicked, and threatened with death. If not for the intervention of a courageous American woman, they might not have survived. The Europeans involved were Simone Moro, an Italian mountaineer renowned for winter climbs on 8,000-meter peaks; Willie Steck, a Swiss alpinist known as the Swiss Machine; and Jonathan Griffith, a British photographer. The conflict began when they climbed the Lhotse face while a Sherpa team was fixing ropes for commercial expeditions. Rope fixing is dangerous work requiring complete concentration, and the Sherpas had radioed that no one should climb while they worked. Accounts differ on what happened next. The Sherpas accused the Europeans of kicking ice onto them. Harsh words were exchanged. Within 5 minutes of the Europeans returning to their tent, a mob of roughly 100 Sherpas had gathered. Rocks flew through the air, striking Steck in the face. Punches and kicks followed. Someone threw a knife. The Sherpas screamed, "Now we kill you!" American climber Melissa Arnott saved them by physically placing herself between the Sherpas and the Europeans. Arnott had summited Everest 6 times and knew Sherpa culture well. She understood that the Sherpas would not strike a woman. Moro was forced to apologize on his knees, and the Europeans were given 1 hour to leave. To understand how this confrontation escalated so quickly, you must understand Sherpa culture and their relationship with Chomolungma. Sherpas are not simply guides for hire. They are an ethnic group who have lived at extreme altitudes for 500 years. Their bodies have evolved remarkable adaptations to thin air, including a genetic variant that allows their blood to carry oxygen more efficiently. But their connection to Everest goes beyond physiology. They believe the mountain is home to Myeolangzangma, the Buddhist goddess of inexhaustible giving. Before any climb, Sherpas conduct a puja ceremony where a Buddhist Lama blesses the expedition with offerings of flour cake, yak butter, and burning juniper leaves. Rope fixing is considered sacred work. The Europeans were seen as having disrespected both the workers and the goddess herself. The 2013 brawl exposed tensions that had been building for decades. Sherpas carry heavy loads through the treacherous Khumbu icefall multiple times, while clients pass through only twice. They earn far less while taking far greater risks. On April 18, 2014, an avalanche in the icefall killed 16 Sherpas, the deadliest single incident in history. When Nepal offered meager compensation, Sherpas boycotted the entire season. The most accomplished Sherpa climber is Kami Rita, who has summited Everest an astonishing 31 times. He was born in the same village as Tenzing Norgay and holds the record for all 8,000-meter peaks, combined with 42 total summits. The Sherpas have protected their sacred mountain for generations, but they are not the only mysterious beings said to inhabit its slopes. In 1951, climbers discovered footprints in the snow that did not belong to any known animal. Footprints that suggested something massive was watching from the heights above. The Yeti footprints and the creatures of Everest. On November 8, 1951, British climbers Eric Shipton and Michael Ward were exploring the Menlung Glacier at approximately 15,000 feet when they spotted something extraordinary. A line of footprints crossed the snow ahead of them, but these were unlike any tracks made by humans or known animals. The prints measured approximately 12 inches long and were twice as wide as a human foot. They showed the clear impression of a large big toe, broader and shorter than the others, with 4 or 5 smaller toes arranged alongside. The team followed the tracks for approximately 1 mile down the glacier. Shipton had no measuring instruments, so he placed Ward's booted foot next to one of the prints and photographed the comparison. Those photographs, first published in the Times of London, became the most famous evidence of the Yeti ever captured. Traveling with Shipton and Ward that day was a young Sherpa named Tenzing Norgay, who would 2 years later become the first person to summit Everest. Tenzing identified the footprints as belonging to a Yeti. In his autobiography, he stated that he believed the Yeti was a large ape. He had never seen one himself, but his father had seen a Yeti twice. Whatever left those prints was walking barefoot in snow at an altitude where human flesh would suffer instant frostbite. It was bipedal and enormous. The most thorough scientific investigation came in 2017, when Dr. Charlotte Lindqvist analyzed 9 alleged Yeti specimens collected from across the Himalayas. 8 samples came from bears and 1 from a dog. But the study revealed that Himalayan brown bears diverged from all other bears 650,000 years ago. They are extremely rare and almost never seen by humans. Yet the mystery persists. Eric Shipton collected fur samples near the footprints that did not match any known animal, and climbers continue to report strange encounters in the high Himalayas. What is certain is that Everest harbors life in places where life should not exist. The highest permanent animal resident is the Himalayan jumping spider, observed at 22,000 feet. These tiny spiders survive by hunting insects blown up by wind. Bar-headed geese perform one of nature's most extreme migrations, crossing the Himalayas at over 23,000 feet in just 7 hours. Snow leopards prowl the lower slopes, and Himalayan black bears claim territory near the mountain's base. But the strangest discovery on Everest has nothing to do with mysterious footprints or unlikely wildlife. It has to do with the rocks at the very summit, rocks that contain the fossilized remains of creatures that once swam in a tropical sea. Secrets at the summit. When Edmund Hillary reached the summit of Mount Everest in 1953, he collected samples of the limestone rocks at the top. Laboratory analysis later revealed something astonishing. Those rocks contained fossils of marine creatures that lived between 520 and 443 million years ago. Trilobites, sea lilies, and tiny shrimp-like organisms. The highest point on Earth is made of the bodies of animals that once lived at the bottom of an ancient ocean. This discovery is evidence of plate tectonics operating over timescales almost impossible for the human mind to comprehend. Approximately 200 million years ago, all the continents were joined in a supercontinent called Pangaea. A vast tropical ocean called the Tethys Sea separated the northern and southern landmasses. The floor of that ocean accumulated layers of sediment and the remains of countless marine organisms. Around 130 million years ago, India began to rift away and drift northward. It traveled more than 6,000 kilometers over tens of millions of years. Then, approximately 50 million years ago, India collided with Asia. The collision caused the Earth's crust to buckle and rise, thrusting the ocean floor upward until rocks that once lay beneath tropical waters stood at the roof of the world. Everest is still rising today, approximately 5 millimeters per year. A distinctive band of rock called the Yellow Band is visible near the summit. a 60-meter thick layer containing marine remains. The mountain holds other secrets, including expeditions that official records have erased. In late 1952, newspapers reported a secret Soviet expedition that attempted Everest from the north. 35 climbers allegedly established camps as high as 27,000 feet before an avalanche killed 6 of them. Russian and Chinese authorities denied the expedition occurred. Most historians believe it was an elaborate hoax, but bodies do appear on Everest that nobody can explain. In 2017, Sherpas searching for a Slovak climber who died discovered 4 additional corpses in a tent at Camp 4. No climbers had been reported missing that year. The bodies have never been identified. The mountain continues to release its dead as ice retreats, but it also continues to claim new victims, including some of the most skilled climbers who ever lived. Final Tragedies of Everest. Willie Steck earned the nickname Swiss Machine because of his almost superhuman climbing abilities. Born in 1976, he was scaling extremely difficult routes by age 17. He set speed records that seemed impossible, including climbing the Eiger's notorious North Face in 2 hours and 22 minutes. He won the prestigious Piolet d'Or Award twice and was named National Geographic's Adventurer of the Year. In April 2017, Steck traveled to Everest with an ambitious goal. He planned to climb both Everest and neighboring Lhotse without supplemental oxygen. On April 30th, he set out alone to acclimatize on Nuptse. He was last seen approximately 300 meters below the summit. Then, he fell approximately 1,000 meters to his death. What caused his fall remains unknown. His climbing partners were too far away to see what happened. Marco Siffredi was a French snowboarder famous for attempting the impossible. On May 23, 2001, he became the first person to snowboard from Everest's summit, descending the Norton Couloir in approximately 2 hours. But Siffredi was not satisfied. His real target was the steeper Hornbein Couloir, a route no one had ever descended. In September 2002, Siffredi reached the summit after a 13-hour climb. Despite warnings from Sherpas about changing weather and his exhaustion, he pointed his snowboard down the Hornbein Couloir and pushed off. Sherpas watching from below periodically lost sight of him in clouds. Then they saw a distant figure stand up and slide silently down the mountain. Marco Siffredi was never seen again. Search teams found no trace of him. His body remains somewhere on Everest, one of more than 200 corpses frozen into the mountain. The death toll continues to climb. Between 17 and 18 people died in 2023, making it one of the deadliest seasons on record. Meanwhile, the mountain faces an environmental crisis. Each climbing season, thousands of visitors generate up to 12,000 kilograms of human waste. Nepal's cleanup campaigns have removed over 110 tons of garbage since 2019, but the problem keeps growing. Climate change is transforming Everest in ways that may soon make it unrecognizable. The South Col Glacier has lost over 54 meters of thickness in 25 years. Scientists warn the highest glacier could disappear by mid-century. As ice melts, more bodies emerge. New regulations taking effect in 2025 require GPS trackers for all climbers and ban solo climbing on 8,000-meter peaks. Climbers must now have summited a 7,000-meter peak before receiving an Everest permit. Yet every spring, hundreds of new climbers arrive at base camp. They step over the same terrain where Maurice Wilson died, clutching his diary, where David Sharp froze to death while climbers walked past, where Marco Siffredi vanished into a cloud. They pass through the death zone where more than 200 bodies lie frozen. They climb past Rainbow Valley where colorful jackets of the dead create a grim mosaic. They push toward the summit where marine fossils testify to the unimaginable power of geological time. Mount Everest has shown us many of its secrets over the past century, but the greatest mystery of all may be why we keep climbing it. What do you think really happened to Mallory and Irvine? And do you believe the stories of guardian angels and ghostly encounters have a scientific explanation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.